Hey there friends, Andrea Walford here from Make Beautiful Cards. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create this Love Forever card featuring Stampin' Up's Forever and Always bundle and the True Love Designer Series paper. Now this card features paper piecing. So the first thing we're going to do for this card is we're going to create the pieces we're going to need for the paper piecing. So you can see it's this piece and this piece. And for that, we're going to use this sheet of patterned paper that comes from the True Love Designer Series paper collection. Now the True Love Designer Series paper collection is a collection of papers in black and white, and one side has floral patterns and the other side has some kind of geometric pattern on it. Now this pattern of paper here, generally, I wouldn't use just as is because I find the flowers kind of large and I think it would overwhelm any card that it's really used on. And the other side, I prefer patterns that are predominantly black with a little bit of white. This has more white than I would normally use, which I thought, you know what, I'm just going to use this side and we're going to cut the pieces out. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to fussy cut the pieces. So you can see here that on this sheet of pattern paper, there are single flowers, there are double flowers, and then there are triple flowers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fussy cut a single flower and a double flower. Now, I'm not going to show fussy cutting in this video simply because I have a video on YouTube called How to Fussy Cut Like a Pro, which goes through, shares some tips and techniques on how to get great results when you're fussy cutting. So essentially what I'm just going to do is I'm going to cut out this flower here. You can already see as I've started to cut out flowers from this pattern. And literally I'm just going to take my scissors and just roughly cut around it, and then I'll go in and cut it out closer to the edge. So once I've done that, I'll be back to show you what it looks like. So here you can see my two fussy cut flowers. So I'm going to set those aside, and now I'm going to create my love die cut sentiment. So for that, I'm using the Always dies. These dies coordinate with the Forever and Always stamp set, and I want to use the dies that will cut out the word love. And there's two parts to the die. There's the inner, which you see here in black, and then there's the outer, which you see here in white. So I have here a scrap piece of each of these colors. Now, what I'm going to do, just to make it easier, is I'm going to place some double-sided adhesive at the back of each of my cardstock pieces. So my double-sided adhesive, it's these adhesive sheets from Stampin' Up. They are 6 by 12, and the backing is split into 3 pieces. So what I just do to make it easier to handle is I just cut them along the strips like this, because I mostly use this when I'm die cutting words or intricate die cuts. Or very fine, yeah, intricate or very fine die cuts. So I peel back some of the backing, and then I go ahead and I just place it or align it with the corner of my cardstock piece. And I always make sure my cardstock pieces are rectangular, it just makes it a lot easier. And then here you can see I fold the backing back over it and cut it. But before I do that, just because I find the backing can be a little bit challenging to separate, I'm just folding back there a little corner of the backing to make it easier for me to grasp for my white piece. So here for my white piece of cardstock, I'm going to fold the backing away again. You do want to make sure that you don't touch the adhesive there. And then I'm going to place this piece like that, and then I'm just going to go ahead and cut, and then you can see I can discard the backing. So now I have both of these cardstock pieces are lined with my adhesive backing. So now I can go ahead and I can take the die for my outline, and I'm going to place it over top of this cardstock piece here, and then I've got my outline, and I'm going to place it over top of this cardstock piece here, and then I'm going to run these through my die cutting machine. I'm back from my die cutting machine, and you can see I have the outline of the word love, and then I have the rest of the actual word itself, which as you can see die cuts in 2 pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully remove the backing from the adhesive, trying not to touch the adhesive if possible, so I'm not removing the entire backing piece right away. And then I'm going to center this piece onto my die cut piece, my die cut outline piece. And then I'll take the second part, I'll start peeling back half of it. So there you can see how that now looks. Now the next thing I want to do is I'm going to die cut a rectangular piece using my stitched rectangles dies. So you can see here there's a set of larger dies. I'm using the 4th from the largest. And I just have it onto a piece of scrap Whisper White cardstock, and I'm going to run it through my die cutting machine. So here you can see this gives me a stitched rectangle, and this is 2 5/8 of an inch wide by 4 inches high. So now what I want to do is I want to emboss this, and I'm going to be using my Parisian Flourish embossing folder. So I'm just going to place it into my embossing folder and then run it through my die cutting machine. So I'm back from my die cutting machine, and here you can see what this piece looks like. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to prep my main cardstock panel, because this is the last thing I'm going to need my die cutting machine for. So this piece is 3 7/8 by 5 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to dry emboss it using my Subtle 3D embossing folder. So once I've done that, I will be back. So I'm back from my die cutting machine, and you can see here my embossed panel. So I'm going to set that aside, and now we're going to work on the Forever greeting. So this greeting is from the Forever and Always stamp set, and you can see it says Forever and, but I don't actually want the word and, I just want the word forever. So I've taken a piece of tape and I've used it to mask off the and then that way I can go ahead and I can ink the rest of the word. Now, I have a scrap piece of paper already secured to my grid paper, and I just want to run my embossing powder tool over it, and that's to make sure, or to reduce the static so I don't get embossing powder all over the place. So now you can see I removed the tape, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stamp this greeting. I'm going to try to stamp it close to the bottom right corner. And then I'm going to sprinkle on some white embossing powder. And any stray little flecks, you can use a little paintbrush, or if there's only 1 or 2 flecks, you can use the tip of a paper piercing tool or the tip of tweezers. So now I'm just going to funnel this embossing powder back into my little container. And then I'm going to take my heat tool and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to heat emboss this. So I'm basically heating it until the embossing powder melts. So there you can see how that looks. So now I'm going to take my small paper trimmer and I want to trim this. So I'm just using the line here, the edge of this plastic guard, to help me align where I need to cut. Now I want this to be a very close cut, so I'm actually positioning my greeting so that I can see some of the lines a little bit beyond the edge of this guard. Now because my piece is so small, I really need to make sure that I secure this piece by holding the plastic guard right where my greeting is. And then I go ahead and cut, and you can see that I got this nice close cut. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to trim this side as well. So there you can see I have this nice close trim for my greeting. So now we're ready to start assembling our card. So I'm going to start by centering and sticking my white embossed panel onto a piece of basic black cardstock. Now my cardstock is 4 by 5 1/4 inches, so it's just 1/8 of an inch larger than my white cardstock panel, which you'll remember is 3 7/8 by 5 1/8 of an inch. Now I'm going to center and stick this to the front of my card. My note card is a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card I created out of a thick white cardstock. Now I have here my embossed panel, And then here I have this strip of pattern paper. It's 3/4 of an inch by just a little over 4 inches. And this comes from the same pattern paper collection as my flowers. So I'm going to just secure this piece to my grid paper so it doesn't shift. Then I'm going to take a little bit of my liquid glue and I'm just going to run a thin line all along the edge of my pattern paper piece. Then I'm going to take my dry embossed stitched rectangle and I'm going to layer it over top so that there is about 1/8 of an inch showing, or a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch. Not quite 1/4 inch, because I think that's too big of a border, but this is a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch. So if you're using the grid paper, it's a little bit more than half of a square. Oops, because I have to let the glue dry before I pull it up. Now you can see there's a little bit of an overhanging edge. So I'm just going to slide this piece into my paper trimmer. And trim. Now to stick my piece down here, I'm going to use some of my Stampin' dimensionals to add some dimension. So I'm going to place dimensionals in each of the 4 corners and the center. I guess in the center is then. So I'm using 6 Stampin' dimensionals in all. I'm going to remove the backings and then we're going to stick this down onto our cardstock panel. So as you can see, what I want to do with this is I want to stick it on an angle. Now I just realized that this panel here is not quite straight, so I'm just going to straighten that. That looks better. And now I'm going to take this and I want to angle it, so I want it to be centered on this cardstock panel and angled. Now I'm going to take my large flowers and using my liquid glue, I'm going to stick them in the top left corner of this panel. And then this flower, I'm going to stick in the bottom right corner. Except I just noticed in looking at my flowers that the leaves are actually going in a bit of a different direction. So let me just see. So you can see here, I cut out quite a few leaves. So let's just see. Not quite sure what I did here, because you'll notice with my card when it's pointed up this way, I have the 3 leaves to the bottom. But my flower, let me just see. My flower is kind of oriented in the wrong direction, so I'm not sure what exactly I did here. So let's just see. I'm going to see if maybe I can change the orientation of this. So let's see if these 2 I could maybe put at the bottom. Yeah, you know what? We're going to do that. It's funny, I never actually noticed that until I was looking at my original card, and when I was placing these, I was thinking, boy, that looks a little bit odd. So we're going to put the single flower at the top, and then I'm going to put the double flower at the bottom, and then that way I just find or feel that that kind of works better. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some gold embroidery thread that I have here. Now this is the DMC Diamant Light Gold. And you can see it's on a roll, and when I pull it off the roll, it's kind of kinked in the shape of the roll. So in order to be able to use this, what you have to do is you have to start rolling it into a circle, but you have to work with the actual direction that these curves are in. So as you can see, I'm just kind of trying to lightly place it so I can let it fall naturally. I love this because it's just a very delicate gold. And then when I feel like when I feel like I've put enough on there, I'm going to cut my end so that it's close to the other end so that I can hide them. I guess I had glue on my fingers. So when working with this, you have to just be very careful that you don't have glue on your fingers. Otherwise, as you can see, it'll just kind of mess everything up. So let's just take a look at how that looks. See, I want to actually spread it out a little bit more. So what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to kind of spread the loops apart a little bit. So this one I have in more of a loop. This one is going to be spread out a little bit more, but I think I still like how it looks. So I think we're just going to go ahead and leave it like that. And I'm going to peel the backing off of my word love. And then I'm going to carefully lay this over top like so, just looking to make sure the ends are going to end up being hidden. And then that's going to help hold that gold piece down. Then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put some glue at the back of the word forever. And I'm going to go ahead and stick this piece down. And that will also help hold that gold cord down. And what I'll probably have to do, you can see here because there's quite a bit of gold cord. Is I'm probably going to have to put a glue dot or something too. So let me just use this ruler. I just want to make sure that this is straight. We'll see if the glue holds over those gold pieces, which it looks like it's going to, so I may not have to put a glue dot under there after all. And then my last step is going to be to embellish it with my matte black dots. So I'm going to take a larger sized dot and I'm going to place it over there, and then I'm going to have two smaller sized dots, so filling in a little bit of this white space. And then I'm also going to put a cluster here towards the bottom. So there you have it, friends. There you see what our card looks like, and it's now finished.